So, hello everyone. I was thinking of doing a series of videos where I'm presenting all of Liszt's piano works. So I have here, I will show you there, I have actually all the piano works of Franz Liszt in the Edition Musica Budapest edition. So it's 18 volumes of the original works, then you have 24 volumes of the transcriptions and paraphrase, and then there are actually supplementary 16 volumes, I think, with the exercise in the 31st. So I'm not sure I will do everything, but I will start with at least the beginning, because I think that the first volumes, the first maybe 10 volumes are the works of Liszt that are famous. And then I will play a small extract of each piece and make a small comment on it. So let's start with the Etudes. The two first volumes, 1 and 2, are the first volume is the 12 Transcendental Etudes of Liszt, and the second volume is the Paganini Etudes and the Concert Etudes, and then the small Appirato Etude. And actually, this way, Liszt made 24 Etudes. He had a plan when he was young to do 24 Etudes. He did the Etude in 12 exercise when he was 11 or something, and then he transformed this in 12 grands Etudes that were a bit heavy, and then later in his Weimar period he reworked the Etudes Transcendant and made them more polished, more musical works. And then he didn't do 24 Etudes, but then later he, before he did also 2 versions of the Paganini Etudes. So there's an early version of 36, I think, and then there's a later version also, again a bit more polished, where mostly the campanella is very different, the other one are quite the same. And he wrote like 2 sets of concerts etudes, so 1 set of 2 etudes and then a set of 3 etudes, and then he wrote a separate little etude for a method that's called Appirato. So actually altogether he made 24 etudes, which was his plan in the beginning. He didn't finish the plan, but it just ended up being 24. So volume number 1 is actually the volume I know the best, and I made a video on ranking the 12 Liszt etudes, so you can have a look, and actually also recorded on YouTube some of the etudes, and I'm planning to record them all soon, finishing recording them all. Yeah, like I said, this version is also important, so it's dedicated to Czerny, his teacher, and everyone knows Czerny, everyone played some Czerny. So he dedicated this, of course, because the technique he had and the research for technical improvement and possibilities of piano is something he had to thanks to Czerny, who put him on this right way. He also gave a title to every etude, which is typical Liszt, because Liszt is also one of the composers that's a program composer, so who mostly likes to mix music with poetry or books or stories or legends and everything. So the first one is called Preludio, so it's prelude in Italian, and it's actually really a kind of an introduction of the set, right? So it's starting with these arpeggios here. And then it is like, so I have a video on this one if you want to listen to it. The second one is actually an interesting too. It's a very short one. It's sometimes called Fusée, but actually this etude has no title. It's molto vivace. It's really fast. And I think it's one of the most difficult. Now, difficulty is always debatable depending how you play stuff. I think it's one of the most difficult because that's one etude I don't like to listen if it's too slow or if it's too metronomic, if it's too steady, because actually it's full of stringendo, rinforzando, accelerando, leggero. It's full of indication that you have to più rinforzando, più mosso, like stringendo again, like this. You have to speed up stuff a lot and then you have some rest. And I think if you don't do this stuff, this etude gets a bit boring. If you do it in a very stable rhythm, this etude is super boring. And I think that's actually one of the things Liszt's work suffers the most, is people playing it too rhythmical, with a too stiff pulse, let's say this. Yeah, and if you try to play this etude prestissimo, stringendo, and all this stuff, it gets like almost impossible to get clean, these kinds of etudes, especially this part here where it's doing these jumps of chords there. And another very difficult part for me, but I think for most of people, is this one here. So this, because this fast, light, playful and clean is very difficult. And then the thing is, the etude is very short, so you don't have a lot of time to prepare or to rest when you're playing. It's not like the Liszt sonata, which also is very difficult, but then you have a lot of rest and you start slowly and then it goes fast, so you have time to warm up. There you start directly in it, and some minutes later the etude is finished. So you have it's like a sprint, like it's not a marathon. The number 3 is actually called Paysage, and Paysage is a poetry of Victor Hugo. And I took this habit of reading the poetries of Victor Hugo. It's in Ode and Ballade from Victor Hugo. So Liszt was friend with Victor Hugo. He knew him, or he met him maybe once or twice, and was a big fan of his literature and his poetry. This Paysage stuff is actually, strangely enough, not about the landscape. It's more about the poet and the goal of a poet, if I'm remembering right. The main difficulty in this etude is actually, it's a legato etude and a polyphonic etude, so having all these voices coming out. And again, I also recorded this one on YouTube. The number 2 actually too. Number 2, I'm not that happy. Should do it again, I guess. It's getting very dense at the end. Then the famous number 4, Mazeppa, is also a poem of Victor Hugo. It's actually legend. Victor Hugo did a poem on this legend of this Ukrainian war lord who betrayed his wife, and then they want to punish him. They put him on a horse that is drugged, naked, and they hope he will die on the horse. But actually, he ends up being, or I'm not sure he's Ukrainian, but he ends in Ukraine or something, and he comes back king of the new place he get adopted, and say he was saved, and actually killed the people who condemned him in the first place. So the whole description is the naked guy being on the horse and going through woods, snow, cold, rain, and everything. It's this horse running stuff that Liszt tried to put in music. And in this etude, I want to say there is actually a beginning where it's written cadenza ad libitum, which nobody does. I'm improvising there a bit. I add some stuff in my recording. I also have a professional recording of this etude that I made for a Polish label. And then he's putting his fingerings there. He's putting 4-2, 4-2 here, 4-2, 2-4, 4-2, 4-2. Like, he doesn't want you to do this kind of easy legato fingering, which will make it a bit soft and fast, but we will lack a bit of this horse riding marcato stuff. I think that's one of the stuff you should try to do, and actually, basically, I think you should always try to do Liszt fingerings because he was a great pianist, he knows how to play. And he's keeping this 2-4 in the second variation too. So this etude, main difficulty is jumps and crossing hands, actually, because this crossing hands and then jumps is actually one of the main difficulties. Then you have this slow part in the middle, which is the main theme. And there again, I would suggest anyone who is playing this to listen to the symphonic poem Liszt made. He made a symphonic poem with the same title, a bit different than the etude, but it's also worth listening to a kind of different way to put stuff in lights. Then number 5 is Feux follets, Irrlichter. So Feux follets are this little flame that when you have a little gas in the ground in the woods, sometimes this just inflames spontaneously, makes some small flames called feu. Feu is fire in French. And people thought it was the devil 100 years, 200 years ago. They thought this was the devil or some spooky spirits or stuff. So there also the thing is, these little flames are very vivid, very fast and small light stuff, and I think this etude also has to be in this spirit. So I think it's a fast etude, although he's writing allegretto and putting a crochet, is from 120 to 126. So if you want to see how much the metronome is there, it's not that fast. And he's also putting sempre legato dolce tranquillo when you come to this part, which is for me, again, the most difficult part of the whole etude, and one part I don't master well. That's the main difficulty because of the double note, and because of the fingering. You're always busy with 4/5, 4/5, or 3/5, which are actually slow and weak fingers. The rest of the etude is fine, but it's also, of course, difficult because it's never stopping and very fast etude. And there again, I think, I don't think speed for itself is something interesting, but sometimes speed underline a character or a mood or an impression you want to give, and I think there speed is something that gives an additional power to the etude. It should be very light, very fast, and a bit crazy as etude. Plus, it's also an etude, so the goal is to practice the difficulty and to master it on a high level, right? So it's actually, that's one of my favorite etudes, and I think it's the best written etude because it's perfectly balanced, everything, the harmonies, the tricks. There is no cheap stuff, because sometimes in Liszt you have sometimes impression there is a bit like cheap technique or cheap effects. That's of course a matter of opinion. I don't often think this, but for sure there is nothing of this. Then the number 6 is called Vision, and that's also a poem of Victor, if I'm not, so let me know if you know this. Vision, I think, is also a poem of Victor Hugo. It's a lento, slow etude, and that's more one for crossing hands and like trying to have a melody on the bass. So that's, if you want to test the bass of your piano, that's an etude you have to do. Then there is this, so it sounds like this. And there actually, I just noticed one because I was watching the rhythm really carefully. It should be actually, so there should be no stop between this and this. Which makes it more difficult. This jump here is very difficult. You have some octaves, you have some thirds. That's not that difficult. It's not the most difficult etude. It's one of the easiest. Then number 7, Eroica. It's maybe that's an homage to Beethoven's 7th Symphony, which is also Eroica. It starts with this. And the fun part actually is this one. Very spiritual, very light. And the difficult part is actually this one. I have this left hand getting free rhythm and the right hand going up in the opposite direction. And then for people who have difficulty with octaves, that's the difficult part. That's the difficult part of octave. Difficult to get really clean. Yeah, the ending is not easy either. Number 8 is Wilde, Chasse sauvage, sometimes in French too. It's a wild hunt, and there really sounds like a wild hunt. It's quite wild and rhythmically. And there actually I have one thing here in this passage here. I found out actually fingering, just a little tip, it's to do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the left hand the opposite, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This gives you because this is very fast, it's very difficult to do very fast, so this gives you the possibility to go faster, and that's something I found out in Liszt exercise. Liszt is doing chromatic scales with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I thought, why not? That's a great idea. Since you have to pass after 4, and you have to wait, so 4, 4, and you have to finish anyway in some way. So the fingerings here is 4, 3, 3, yeah? Groups of 4, group of 3 and 3. So you have to pass the finger twice. When you do the group of 5, you have to pass after 1, which is more difficult, but you have to pass only once. So if you manage to do this transition smoothly and you don't hear the passing finger after 5, I think it's a better fingering. There is one of the nicest, beautiful parts in this one. It's this, again, slower part, this one. we have 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 3, and on the left you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So you have groups of 3 on the right hand, groups of 2 on the left hand, and this second voice, first voice and then second voice on the left hand, that makes a very nice polyphony. And it's one of the difficult places to memorize. I remember someone telling me he had problems to memorize this too. Then there is a very leggermente jump thing here. Which is a part you have to practice and it's difficult. Number 9 is also one of my favorites because I think it's also one of the most polished and most musical one. It's Ricordanza, means memories or remembering. That's actually a kind of ornaments, or how you call this arabesque, this stuff that are typical Liszt, this kind of runs. And also the beginning, like the rhythmical is also mostly very, you have groups of 3, of 5, of 7, mixed with 6, like it's always changing. It's not, you don't really feel a stable beat there, which I think is nice because it gives you the feeling of floating. There are very nice melodies there, some very nice effects also, and then you have this very long. So this not measured or like kind of free improvisations there that you really have to master. And then the next one, which is a bit more difficult one. A lot of free arpeggios, like groups of 20, groups of 21. It's a really nice etude, and you have this very, very calm, soft places where you have this here. That's a very poetic place. Number 10 is also one of my favorites. It's actually also one of the best emotional etude, starting with these crazy chords. They're just beautiful themes there, like that's a very passionate etude, and I think that's why some people call it appassionata. You have these very difficult places. Also, it can be very harmonically or dissonant, like this. It's very dissonant and very aggressive place. And then actually it's mostly an etude for extensions and extensions on the left hand, because you have this big part which is the most beautiful part here. So this one I hope I will record soon. I'm practicing. The Ricordanza, I made a recording too. The 11 is called Harmonie du soir, and that's actually that's a poem of Baudelaire, but I'm not sure if Liszt linked them. Actually, he's not always saying where his source is, but I think he was like thinking, if you know literature, if you know art, you have to find out yourself. That's also one of the slow etudes, although there are like some big jumps and gets sometimes a bit heavy. And it's a bit similar to the Chopin etude number 11. Chopin etude 11 is also arpeggio. I actually don't know this etude, but you have these big arpeggios in this etude here. Where does it start? part. I'm not sure if this is a homage to Chopin or by accident, but who knows. And then you have this beautiful place here. So this etude is actually also very modern, because I remember hearing when I was a student someone playing this in the lesson, and then after this he played Debussy, this Cathédrale engloutie, and I was thinking the music is very similar, this Debussy and Liszt. Actually, Debussy met Liszt. He went to meet him when the old Liszt was in Weimar, and Debussy was surely influenced by Liszt music. Yeah, then the famous jumps here. I don't think this is the most difficult thing ever. Depends again how fast you play, but I don't think this should be really fast. I think it's a very passionate place. It should be a bit more large, but that's up to everyone. And then also one of the most beautiful etudes of the set is the number 12, and since Ruti is ending with this, it's called Chasse-neige. And Chasse-neige is actually, I think the idea, Chasse-neige is also a machine actually that is pushing the snow on the ski piste. But at Liszt's time, it was probably more either the wind in the snow, like wind blowing the snow, or maybe some, I don't know, some people pushing the snow at that time. I don't know what. It has this very wintry, cold, moving spirit, right? And that's actually an etude for, I also have a recording of this one. That's an etude for tremolo, of course, for jumps mostly, and for chromatic scales. There's a lot of chromatic scales in all directions there that are also not really measured. Putting your chromatic abilities to the limit. This etude is also very difficult to get the melody clear and the middle part soft. In this place. Yeah, then the chromatic stuff. Crazy etude. Needs a lot of practice. So that's a transcendental etude. So a set of 12 very difficult pieces, maybe the most difficult pieces ever written. That's also discussable.